Hey guys, Brad here today from the OFAH. In today's lesson, we're going to learn all about possibly the most popular game species in all of Ontario, grouse. In today's lesson, we're going to aim to answer 3 questions all about grouse. How do we identify grouse? Where do they live? And what do they eat? So stick around as we explore all about Ontario's grouse today. How do we identify grouse? Grouse are ground-dwelling birds that are distant relatives to pheasants and turkeys. There's a very wide range of species within this bird family around the world, but there are some common features that most of these grouse species share. In general, most grouse species have differences between the males and females. Each sex looks different from each other, in some cases very different. Grouse's toes are covered in feathers, and they grow what we call pectinations. Pectinations are fleshy, comb-like structures that they grow on their feet. They've adapted this way to help insulate themselves and to stop from sinking into deeper snow, kind of like when we wear boots with snowshoes. While grouse are capable of flight, and they can reach very fast speeds while flying, they do prefer to walk or run from predators first, and they have very powerful legs. Ontario's grouse species are each about the size of a small chicken. So in Ontario, we have 4 species of grouse. Ontario's grouse species are the very common ruffed grouse and spruce grouse, as well as the not-so-common sharp-tailed grouse and willow ptarmigan. Ruffed grouse are birds that are about the size of a chicken. They stand about 30 to 40 centimeters in height, which is about as tall or a little bit taller than a basketball. They have reddish-brown to gray-brown colored feathers. Ruffed grouse come in different colored patterns, known as color phases, but they're always a combination of these color tones. They also have a short crest on their head, bars of color on their sides, and a black ruff around the neck. This ruff on the neck is where they get their name of ruffed grouse. Sometimes this black ruff is hard to see, but other times it may be puffed out on display. It has a short, slightly curved, pointed beak and a long fan-shaped tail, which you can lay out flat or spread out like a turkey does. These birds can be very well camouflaged, as their brown, gray, reddish color patterns blend into the forest floor. Males and females look almost the same, except for a colored band across their tail feathers. The band on a male's tail will be solid all the way across, where a female will have a broken color to the banding in the middle tail feathers. This can be hard to see, but it's a good indicator of a bird's sex if you can spot it. Spruce grouse are very similar in size to ruffed grouse, although slightly smaller, but they can look very different depending upon their sex. Males can be identified because they're blackish-gray in color, with a lighter colored underside. Males usually also have a red patch of skin over their eyes. Females can be identified by their reddish-brown-gray patterned feathers and white bars on the undersides. Many people often confuse a spruce grouse female with a ruffed grouse. However, a spruce grouse has a shorter, dark tail with a pale-colored band at the end of its tail, while a ruffed grouse has a longer tail which is lighter in color with a dark band near the tip. Sharp-tailed grouse, in many ways, also resemble ruffed grouse and female spruce grouse, but there are some big differences to tell them apart. Their feathers are made up of the similar brown-gray colorings of these other species, against a background of white. Sharp-tails, as they're often called, have light underparts and a white belly with V-shaped markings on it. This bird gets its name because of a much shorter tail than other grouse species, featuring 2 central feathers that are lighter and longer than the outer tail feathers, and when they're displayed, they come to a sharp-looking point. Adult males usually have a violet display patch on the neck under their chin, as well as bright yellow skin patches where the eyelids would be over their eyes. Females are much smaller than the males. Willow ptarmigan much like the other grouse species, are deep-chested and have a fairly long neck, a broad bill, short, feathered legs, and a short, rounded tail. In the summer, feathers are marbled brown with a reddish hue to the neck and breast, a black tail with white wings and undersides. They have a red eyebrow-like feature above each eye. During winter, the body and two central tail feathers of both sexes becomes completely white, except for the black outer tail feathers. Their wing feathers remain white all year round. In winter, their feet are heavily feathered to the tips of their toes. Where do they live? Ontario's grouse species all live in different habitats, with some overlap. Let's get into the details for each species. In Ontario, ruffed grouse can be found throughout the province, except for in the extreme northern parts of the province. They thrive best where forests are kept young by occasional clear-cutting or by fire, and these birds gradually shrink in numbers as forests get more mature. Small openings in trail networks can benefit ruffed grouse because they usually offer green plants and plentiful insects for younger birds to feed on. This is a very common place to find ruffed grouse. Spruce grouse share a similar range across Ontario as ruffed grouse, but they generally are found beginning a little bit further north, with their sightings in southern Ontario being rare. They're in the northern regions of the province in quite heavy numbers, in some cases even more so than ruffed grouse, depending upon the habitat. The understory is what we call all of the growth that comes underneath the canopy of the trees. Although a dense understory of food-bearing shrubs is as important for spruce grouse as it is for ruffed grouse, they can mostly be found in thicker and more mature forests than ruffed grouse. Conifer forests and spruce-covered muskeg are some of their favorite habitats. They're almost always found in these conifer forests, but not necessarily always in spruce-heavy growth. That's because spruce grouse prefer to roost above the ground, most often in these coniferous or sometimes in mixed wood-dominated stands. The sharp-tailed grouse is typically a prairie bird, and an open habitat is the norm when people think of these beautiful birds. They can, however, be found in the north of Ontario. In Ontario, they can be found north of Lake Superior, out towards the Manitoba border, as well as in the Sault Ste. Marie and Manitoulin Island areas. They inhabit grasslands, brushy prairies, and edges of woodlands. In northern Ontario, they prefer to live in open forest habitat, such as mature deciduous forests, and in areas which have recently been logged, burned, or on open farmlands bordering on forests. In Ontario, willow ptarmigan breed mainly on the Hudson Bay coast. They are typically a tundra-dwelling bird, but they can be found in the boreal forest at certain times. The willow ptarmigan is a migratory grouse. During the breeding season, which is summer, willow ptarmigan inhabit subarctic and subalpine habitats where there is abundant shrubby vegetation. This includes all of Canada's territories. During this season, they favor flat, moist areas. In the autumn, willow ptarmigan migrates southwards into the boreal forest for the winter, but there's lots of variety in how they move. What do they eat? When the ground is free of snow, ruffed grouse feed on a wide variety of green leaves, fruits, and some insects. They've also been known to eat snakes, frogs, and salamanders as well. When snow covers the ground, ruffed grouse are almost exclusively flower eaters, living on the dormant flower buds and catkins of trees such as aspen, birch, poplar, cherry trees, ironwood, and more. Spruce grouse eat mostly conifer needles. Adult birds are mostly herbivores, feeding heavily on the needles of pine, spruce, and other conifers. This diet concentrates even more heavily and almost exclusively in certain locations on needles into and through the winter. At other times, These birds are known to eat fresh green shoots, grasses, and leaves of other plants, berries, flowers, insects, snails, and mushroom species. Sharp-tailed grouse forage on the ground in the summer and in trees in the winter. They eat seeds, buds, berries, forbs, and leaves. They also eat insects, especially grasshoppers in the summer. In winter, when food on the ground is mostly buried by snow, they're known to feed heavily on the buds of trees and shrubs. Willow ptarmigan have a simple diet of plant matter. Primarily, they eat flower buds, catkins, leaves, twigs, berries, and seeds. In summer, they also eat whatever insects are available, both from the ground and in low-growing vegetation. Specific plant foods include willow, blueberry, birch, poplar, and seeds of various grasses. I hope you've learned a lot about these incredible and delicious game bird species. Now that you have, keep an eye out for them when you're moving around in the forest and see if you can identify which one you've seen. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like this video and comment below. Don't forget to check out the resources section on our webpage. There you'll find free printable resource material like mini lessons and activity pages to follow up the virtual lessons. And please subscribe to stay connected as we learn together outside of the classroom.